So welcome, everyone. Um, what I do know about well-being is that it's something that we often don't think about. It's not sexy. We wait until something really goes wrong or we need to really pay attention. So I'm hoping that you'll gift yourself the present of being present for the next, say, 20 minutes. And as I'm chatting, I don't want this to be, I'm not here to preach to you. And the more I do this work, I've been doing this for 25 years, is that nobody knows more about well-being than you. But often when we're busy and high achieving individuals, we don't make the time like today to spend a gracious, spacious half an hour reflecting on a topic like our well-being, which relates to resilience, energy, performance, mental health. And without it, we don't have anything. You can't lead, you can't build, you can't found, you can't start up anything. So I'm going to share. I was thinking about this yesterday afternoon. I was like, what do I do if I only have 20 minutes or so with the group? And I was thinking at the moment, what I feel is important and helpful for anybody in a leadership role, if you want to manage your mental performance and your state and your energy, get lots done with less time, less error, more flow, more joy, and have energy for the precious other parts of your life too. I'm going to share my top tip around how to help with this 4-pound universe on top of your shoulders. So your mental state, and one top tip to how to manage stress and your heart, and one top tip for your gut. So head, heart, and gut. Those three energy centers are very powerful. And when we look after them, the ROI is huge. So does that sound good? I hope so. I hope so. I'm going to share some slides and chat. But like I said, if you have a comment or a question as I'm going through things, keep it active in the chat so that when we come back to that, it feels as if we're around a boardroom table or perhaps even a fireside. That would be awesome. And then we have a conversation to go. So what we're chatting about today, the benefit for you is that it helps to, hang on a second. I don't think I have shared my, make sure that I do that share. There we go. Perhaps Lee, I'm going to ask you in a moment to give me a thumbs up if you can see the slide. Awesome, thanks. So your chemistry, your physiology, right now, you've got neurochemicals going in your brain, you've got adrenaline, you've got some cortisol, you've got blood pressure happening, lots of things are going on. And all of that's going to determine not only how your morning goes, but how you feel when you get home later this afternoon and this evening. And so how we manage our body and our state has a direct impact on our physiology, our psychology, our performance. We all know what it's like when you wake up with loads of energy. I don't know how you jumped out of bed this morning, if you jumped or dragged yourself out. When you've got lots of energy, you can do all kinds of things. When you don't have energy, it can feel like everything is an insurmountable mountain, right? And so today I'm going to ask you at the end of our time together to commit, if you'd like to, everything's an invitation, to one thing that you feel can help you move towards being more of your own CEO. The title CEO for me means Chief Energy Officer. So how can you take something from our time together that can help you better manage and mobilize energy on demand? Because that's a superpower. We also know another superpower is when we are well and healthy, we have options. There's this beautiful Chinese proverb that says, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes, a sick person has just one. So when we are well, we don't think about our well-being generally. When we're really sick, we've got a bad headache, we have COVID, we have an injury, or worse, all we can think about is being well. And today it is shocking, especially amongst high achievers, how silent this epidemic of burnout can be. So we have these blind spots, or what I call well-being weaknesses, that we don't realize are actually adding up slowly, quietly, until one day they don't and something big happens. I mean, this happened to me just this week. A personal friend, also a speaker from Vistage, overnight, Saturday, she was with her sister and she had a heart attack. Initially, we thought she had, we didn't think she was going to make it through. Then we thought she had brain damage. Then we thought she was paralyzed. Fortunately, now it seems like there might not be too much neural damage. But she's an incredibly well woman. But something has happened for her heart to respond like that. And likely it has to do with this. The fact that we are so stressed. Our bodies are constantly in the stress response. And we need to learn and practice how to relax. Because if we don't, the first price is low energy, which leads to exhaustion and eventually potentially burnout. But there's many other things that happen. And I'm curious, do you know when your body is stressed? Like right now, you're sitting at your desk, Some of you don't have your cameras on, so you could easily be distracted doing other things. How do you know that you're optimally functioning? Because you're not in your optimum performance if you're in the stress response. Because when you're in the stress response, your body contracts. That's why we get a lot of back, neck, shoulder tension. I tend to clench my jaw. I get a lot of tension here. The breathing elevates, and so you use up oxygen faster, which is why you can feel tired. Your digestion slows down. Your immune system doesn't work that well. So all kind of things start to go. And it's important to know what happens to your head, your heart, your gut when you're feeling stressed. Because without knowing, you can't take conscious action. If you get to know me, because I know Ollie does, I am crazy about champagne. So my whole family are from the Champagne region in France. I was born in South Africa, which is where this photo was taken, where a very good champagnes are made, but not called champagnes, of course, because they're not in that demarcated area. But often on vineyards, you might have noticed that there are roses at the end of the rows of vines. I wonder if you know why they're there. Because if this was a startup exercise, that's a very expensive aesthetic exercise if it's just to look good. The roses are there as an alarm system because the roses will be affected by a particular mildew before the vine is. So the caretaker of the vine, the manager, the person in charge will be, hey, I need to pay attention if these roses start to struggle. Otherwise, I could lose the whole crop. So I'm curious, do you know, what are you paying attention to? And maybe you aren't. And maybe today, this is the one thing you take from today is, how could I be a bit more curious about my body? And one way to make it easier. This well-being stuff isn't easy. If it was, I wouldn't have this job and everybody would be healthier, happier, and we wouldn't have the mental health crisis that we find ourselves in. So if it's, common knowledge, because we know what we need to do. We know what is good for us. It doesn't mean we do it. It's not common knowledge, common practice, I mean, which is why I have this great job. So one of the things, now I'm going to shift from not just noticing or being curious about your body, but going through those 3 top tips that I have for your mind, your heart, and your gut. And I don't expect you to leave with all 3. If you're already doing some of these, amazing. I celebrate you. But I'd like you to think about one thing or just be curious. When is stress maybe taking its toll? And I could be more productive if I had an idea of that. So the first thing, if you want to best manage this awesome organ, your brain, where you think and process and produce so many chemicals that affect your chemistry, we need to think about how you start your morning. So when you wake up in the morning, are you waking up with your phone? And is your phone on, which means it's not on flight mode, which means as you're looking at it, potentially you're getting exposure to messages, emails, social media, news. When you wake up in the morning, you might actually feel amazing. But because you don't check in with yourself and you look at something on your phone, a message, an email, because, it's important. We're running businesses and we've got lives and there's socioeconomic stuff going around that we want to know about. But then it can shift you. You can become frustrated, irritated, and that sets a different chemical pathway down your body. And you will have a different type of day because of that. I'm not going to go into the science today. Everything I talk about is science-backed. I know that sometimes it sounds woo-woo. None of it is. If you're curious about anything I say, after today, I hope that we'll be friends, that you'll consider me a well-being partner, and we can find each other maybe on LinkedIn, and you can always send me a message or we can have a chat if there's anything that I could potentially help you with or that you're not sure about. When you wake up, your brain does not just switch on. You consciously might think that you're up and you've got a cup of coffee in your left hand and you're now ready for the day. But actually, what we know about the neuroscience is that your brainwave state is in a very receptive place right when you wake up and right before you fall asleep. And if you are not harnessing this science and this physiology about your body, you're potentially losing out on some great impact. Because when you go to bed and sleep, so the night before, hopefully you sleep easily. If you don't, because sleep deprivation or insomnia is a big issue, and I've done masterclasses on that topic, so I'd be delighted to send some information to you. But when you drop into sleep, your brain waves slow down very much. So you go into what we call delta brainwave and theta. This enables you to do memory consolidation, you process everything that's happened to you, you dream. Without that, you would not be alive. It is not possible to survive without that. It's very important. As you wake up in the morning, before you start going into the stress response, so before you start producing adrenaline and making cognitive decisions and showing up with a certain way of being as a founder, as a leader, You enter the state called the alpha brain state. This is where you're relaxed. It's where you're lucid. You know, where you're like lying in bed sometimes. Like this morning, I was having the most ridiculous dream. I'm going to message that lady because I'm like, why was she in my dream? I haven't thought about her in months. But there she was. There we were doing our thing. But of course, the moment I got up, I would have, well, I remembered that specifically because I made a note because I want to message Linda. But that's the state I'm talking about. We enter that state when we do hobbies, creative pursuits, when we're with loved ones laughing, when we're in the shower, when we're walking the dog, when we're cooking a meal. You've had this experience, right? Where you're like doing nothing related to work, but you problem solve, or you remember something that was so important that you can't believe you actually forgot it. And that's potentially because your nervous system was slightly relaxed and you were in this alpha brain state. So if you wake up, how can you spend more time in that state before you go into what we call beta brainwave? Like right now, you're concentrating. If you're trying to listen to me and answering emails, you're definitely in high beta, not low beta, which means you're not doing your best work. The mind focuses, becomes narrow. The prefrontal cortex can only do one thing at a time. And you lose big picture holistic thinking where you integrate all parts of the brain. There are many ways that you can go into alpha. I'll share one more in a moment, but what I want to share is in the morning, are you thinking strategically before you look at your phone and engaging with news or social media? Just a thought. I want you to think about how could you give yourself a bit more time in the morning, and maybe you already give yourself half an hour. Amazing. Could you use techniques that can get you into alpha brain state? And I'll share one of them in a moment. If any of you are doing mindfulness or meditation or some deep breathing for 5, 10, 15 minutes, that's taking you into alpha brain state for sure. So, and there are also activities. I'm sure you've heard of the research around flow state. As founders, it's really important to understand flow because when you're in flow, according to Stephen Kotler, the guy who wrote Stealing Fire and who does so much research around flow state, we are 400 to 500% more productive. So, for instance, one of his top tips, and James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, says the same: create pockets of time. Like today, if you've got a big strategic thing to work on or a project, or you've got a problem solve, create pockets of time where you're not distracted and do things like professional athletes. You know, if there's a certain piece of music that can get you into that flow, or you drink out of a particular cup of tea, or you bounce around for 30 seconds and then sit. You know, it's like we've seen our favorite tennis players, they do a particular bounce with the ball, or they play with the racket, or, you know, it works for those kind of high achievers. And we're corporate athletes running this consistent race. Like we can use those kind of rituals. So are you using these rituals, especially in the morning? Because how you start your day can determine the physiology for the rest of the day. And if you're not getting enough sleep, or if it's just not possible in the morning for you to lengthen how much time you spend in that alpha brain state, because maybe you pick up your phone and within minutes, like you're on your phone, that there's a lot of us doing that. Could you practice things like non-sleep deep rest? And I'm curious if anybody has done this. Won't you pop a yes into the chat? So there's a lot of free guided non-sleep deep rest options out there. Andrew Huberman has got one. These are 10 or 15-minute recordings that you can listen to any time of the day that help you get into alpha brain states without going into sleep. If you can power nap, this is exactly what you're doing when you power nap. If you find my voice soothing, because a lot of the Vistage groups and other peer groups that I work with, they've told me for years that my voice is soothing. I'm not sure how it comes across through Zoom. But I do have on my website an 11-minute non-sleep deep rest nighttime meditation and an 11-minute one that you can use in the morning. So if you want to try that out, you need to listen to it with headphones ideally, because I use 8D music and binaural beats. I'd love to know what you think about them. So that's my top tip for your brain, is to think about how you start your morning and are you harnessing the power of going into alpha brain states. Now, what about your heart? How is your heart this morning? The best way to know how your heart is doing is to look or to think of your breathing to her. For the next minute or so, what I'd like to invite you to do is, if you're able to, soften your gaze, maybe close your eyes, and bring your awareness to where your heart is beating in your chest, so behind your sternum and your breastbone. And notice how on your next inhale, your chest lifts slightly, and on the exhale, it drops. And what would it be like if on your next in-breath, you took in a little bit more air, allowing the air to move right down into the bottom of your lungs. Your lungs go all the way down, almost to where your abdomen starts. That's where your lower rib is. But most of us breathe just here at the top because we're so contracted. We hyperventilate. There's a thing called email apnea. Now, you've heard of sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is when at night we don't breathe properly, perhaps we're snoring or there's a nasal septum going on, and it's really, really bad for your health. Email apnea is a similar thing. When we're at our desks and behind screens, emails and proposals and things, we can contract and hold our breath, sometimes for up to 30 seconds. That's not good. That's not good. So a breathing technique that I'd like to leave with you today, that is something I do all the time. In fact, I'm doing it right now, is when you inhale, is to imagine you have a strong back. What do I mean by that? Often in stress at our desks, we collapse and we crunch forward and we contract and frown. So strong back is, imagine there's like a string or a pole lifting your back. So you keep your posture up, because when your posture's upright, it's easier to take a full deep breath in. So strong back, and as a founder, you need a strong back. Someone's got to have your back. And if you don't have your back, no one else is going to have your back. So strong back, but as you exhale, soft front. And by soft front, what I mean is give your jaw, your neck, your shoulders permission to soften, to stay soft. We don't want to guard our hearts. We also want to release this tension, because if you carry all this tension all day, it's like squeezing your muscles. You can even try this. Squeeze your left hand as if you're squeezing a lemon and keep squeezing, keep squeezing. You hold your breath, you get contracted. It's exhausting. But many of us, we're not aware of our posture and our breathing and our musculature in the day. This will save you bucket loads of energy if you can become more aware of your breathing and releasing some of the tension. So deep breath in, I invite you to go strong back. And as you exhale, imagine soft front. Let your shoulders drop towards the ground, even if you just imagine it. Soften your jaw, let your tongue drop in your mouth. Let your body feel heavy. Ah, I can feel that. So head, heart. Last tip I'd like to share with you today is around your gut, because I'm sure you've heard in the media all about the gut. The gut is your second brain. So once again, I'm not going to go into the science, but what we understand about your gut is phenomenal. Your mental health is directly linked to your gut. If that's why when you're nervous or you're agitated or you're potentially not well mentally, often we have digestive issues, heartburn, stomach ulcers, butterflies, constipation, diarrhea. So they are connected. The best thing you can do to support your gut, which doesn't only help your brain, it also helps your immune system, because most of your immune system lies in your gut. The best thing you can do is make sure that when you eat food, now as a dietitian, this is my area of expertise. I'm a dietitian and I'm French. I am crazy about food, good food, because we don't eat good food anymore. Well, some of us don't. There's a lot of ultra processed foods, which is not good for our gut. We need color. We need to eat like an artist. What do I mean by that? When you make your plate a canvas for color, it means that you're choosing lots of colorful foods. Colorful foods are not Doritos or wine gums or chocolates. It's nature's colorful palette. So things like, well, not things like, all your fruits, all your salads, all your vegetables. We should have about 8 portions of these foods a day. A portion is a tennis ball size. If you want ideas on how to do that realistically while you're running around and trying and building a business and doing life, I have lots of ideas, because like I said, this is my passion. And when you look after your gut, you can look after so much. My mom had a very serious gut issue. It activated cirrhosis. So her skin, you can see in that picture, her skin got so bad at one point. Her tummy was completely blocked up. All she did was she focused on eating lots of fiber, and she did some mindfulness to relax, because when you deeply breathe, you also help the gut, double win. And within 4 months, she almost cleared the cirrhosis. This was taken 7 years ago. She's never needed to take a corticosteroid again, as long as she eats a lot of these foods, to keep her fiber intake where it needs to be. All right. Deep breath in, please. Strong back. And as you exhale, soft front, because we've covered a bit of ground. And now I'm going to hit the ball back to you and be like, okay, you've invested time to be here. We've spent about 20 minutes together. Is there any action that you feel you can take based on today? And if you're happy to pop something into the chat, is there something you're curious about? Is there an action that you might take? I'd love to see if anybody is going to do that, because there's something about a public declaration. It's also collective wisdom and interesting for me to see. Based on what we spoke about around the head, your mind, this 4-pound universe, how you start your day, could you be harnessing more of the alpha brainwaves? Are you interested maybe in doing techniques like non-sleep deep rest? What about your heart and the way that you breathe? Is that something that you could be curious about? Maybe using strong back, soft front? Or are you going to be maybe curious about your gut, thinking about how you can help it to help you? So as Ollie has shared, thank you, to think about more color in your diet. Now, well-being is a vast topic. We've just looked at 3 dimensions, and in the work that I do, it's hard to sometimes know where to start, and it can be overwhelming, which is why these 3 tips that I've just given you come from a framework that I know Ollie has been through in the past. It's called the Wellculator. So I designed the Wellculator specifically when I started doing corporate and workplace well-being in 2006, when I started working with Vitality Health in South Africa, the health insurer. The Wellculator is an incredible tool that helps you identify not only your strengths, but your well-being weaknesses. And finally, which I'm very delighted about, I've taken the Wellculator and I've put it online. So, because I wanted to leave you with something practical that you could take today, but I also appreciate that sometimes it's good to know, well, what are the other things I can do around my well-being? Because we haven't spoken about exercise, about movement, about knowing your health numbers, about hydration, about mindfulness, about managing blood glucose, about joy spotting and gratitude and activations during your workday, and how to really harness your sleep. I mean, there's lots. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed. So what I thought as an action, if you would like to get an overall score going through the full Wellculator, so you'll get a percentage. It takes 3 minutes, by the way. Most people are averaging 2 to 2.5 minutes to complete it. So you'll get a score. And we look at 4 dimensions: how you feed yourself, nourish; how you sleep, rest, recharge, your work-life balance; how you move your body and activate, so things like strong back, soft front, and using posture; and how you manage stress and your mental health and your breathing. So if you want to get a score, something that you can keep and maybe come back to, because you can do the Wellculator over and over again. This was actually my results from 2 days ago. No, sorry, these are not my results from 2 days ago. This was a friend of mine. You can access the Wellculator here. And Ollie, if you'd like me to, I'm happy to share a copy of the slides if you're going to send a follow-up note to those that were here or those that maybe wanted to be here. And yeah, I just feel like that's a way for you to get a holistic view of your well-being, know what you can do, and then I help you immediately make sense of your score and take some action around that. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any comments, or if anybody wants to come off mute and say hi. Peter, I've just spotted your comment. Yes. An achy anything in the upper body generally could be due to the contraction of stress. So if you need some tips around that, by the way, in the cold, I've got this hot pack that I heat up in the day and I put at the back of my neck because I also carry tension here. And the heat helps to soften the tension in your upper back. So something as simple as that. And then, of course, stretching your neck. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I have a heat pad I've tried, and I've got one that sits over the shoulders around the neck. When I sit at night, I put that on and use that. It does help. And I've also got one of those shaped things that you lie on the floor and put under your neck.
Very good. Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's not really shifting it, and so your tip today and think more about what I'm doing in my daytime that's causing me stress.
Yes, because if you're stressed for 8 or 10 hours and then want to lie and rest and stretch for 20 minutes, it's not 50, it's not nearly the same. So yeah, keeping it softer throughout the day may help a lot. I hope so.
We've seen the benefit of people within Vistage and also start to stand up with the Wellculator. It's a brilliant tool. Any additional questions for Celynn while she's with us this morning? Neil, Stuart?
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks. I mean, it's I think there's lots of good things that you hear from different directions. I think more than a direct question, kind of sharing some of the things that have worked for me. One, I wear a Whoop, which and the thing that I've really noticed is the HRV is when I can track when I'm doing well, which is the heart rate variability. And when it's low for me, I know that that's not when it's high. And, you know, I'm lucky that mine can go very high. But that, I think what I love about this is it tracks me against me rather than, you know, so many of the kind of things where you look at fitness app or health apps or you're comparing yourself to everybody else. It learns how you're doing well. I think then another one that's quite worked for me is actually some of the more physical things around, say, contrast showers and cold things and taking you out of, so that whole idea of sometimes if you wake up or your body's full of anxiety or that kind of noise, if you do something like have a cold shower, it shocks you out of that sense and it fills your body full of completely different set of chemicals that it's impossible to, you know, so that those are some of the best things for mood change. I think some of the challenges is actually the routine of doing it, such as I know full well I'll sleep better if I have a contrast shower before I go to bed, but it's just like, oh, can I be bothered? Or
and also it depends on who you are. So one of the questions on the Wellculator is about, do you get out of your comfort zone and stretch your resilience through either heat, cold, and there's many other ways because not everybody wants to do the cold exposure. And me genetically, my COMT gene doesn't clear dopamine in my brain. So I should not do anything that's going to raise dopamine at the end of the day. But a cold shower in the morning for me to boost dopamine, amazing. And HRV, I'm delighted. It is the best indicator of how fit your nervous system is. So I also do 15 minutes every morning with a biofeedback device from HeartMath. It's wonderful that you're measuring yourself against yourself, Neil. I celebrate you. And Peter, no, the Whoop won't measure glucose. If you want to measure glucose, you need a little white patch that goes onto your arm. The best one is from Abbott. It's called Libre Freestyle. Very interesting. It lasts for 2 weeks. And I even use them occasionally and just look at what's happening to my blood sugar while I eat and drink.
Have you tried, or do you have any feedback on Zoe? Because that's another.
Very good. It's a very good program. It takes commitment, but everyone that does it, I notice they really stick to it, you know, because it looks at your stool samples, your blood, it identifies, and of course, what they say is more plant-based foods is good for most of us. So eat more color.
Yeah.